This Australian band were staples on the soundtrack of my youth and young adult life with hits Are You Gonna Be My Girl, Cold Hard Bitch, and others on constant rotation. Fast forward to 2025, this group is currently on tour across North America. I'm talking about Jet, and I'm joined on the SWOMP podcast with bass guitarist Mark Wilson. Mark, how's it going?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Doing fantastic. So you guys have made the journey across several ponds and are on North American soil, specifically Canadian soil. So you guys just played
We're in Montreal. We just arrived in Montreal. We played Toronto last night. It's the first time in quite a while. It was really fun.
Yeah, I was going to say, you guys, I think it's your first Canadian show since about 2010, right?
Yeah, easily. Yeah, absolutely.
Right on. So how was the Toronto crowd last night?
Really great. Like, Toronto's a cool city. For us, it's funny because we actually find it reminds us quite a lot of home, Toronto. It doesn't look like Melbourne, but there's a certain feel to the city and the people and the way it kind of works. And there's trams and all the street names are the same. Canadians are kind of our cousins, like our Commonwealth cousins.
Absolutely. So you're already in Montreal, so you got several more shows scheduled over the next few weeks. Boston, New York, Nashville, Philly, Chicago, across the U.S. We're really hoping to catch your performance at the Fillmore in downtown Detroit on June 6th. So what are some of these venues and cities that you're most excited to play on this current run?
I think Detroit's the site of one of our very vivid memories of the very early days. We played, before we put our first album out, we did many, before anyone had heard of us, we were doing tours in a van around the States. And I remember one time we played in Hamtramck. I think it was called Slim's or something like that. I could be wrong. It was a small, tiny venue, like a tiny little club. And there was more people on stage than there was in the audience back in those days. And then one guy went to the toilet and there was one guy watching us, It was like that, we were just no one had heard of us, but we were we were out running around doing these sort of tours when we were real young. I can't remember the last time I was in Detroit.
There's definitely going to be more people in the crowd than on stage. So the buzz for Jet on this North American tour is definitely noticeable. I'm not even sure if tickets are still available for a lot of these shows, but
I think they are. Yeah, they are. Definitely.
Okay, right.
Yeah, we're not all sold out yet. So,
well, maybe talk a little bit about that contrast. How did you go from small clubs with hardly anyone there to basically selling out great venues all across North America?
I guess we were lucky enough to have a bunch of songs that connected, and then it took off. And North America, USA and Canada, we have a platinum record in the USA, which for an Australian band is no mean feat. I think our music kind of resonated on the radio because it sounded different to what was out at the time, especially on the rock radio. We have a different sound to everybody, and I think it just sort of jumped out of the speakers and kind of captured people's imagination.
100%. I know it did that for me, for sure. And I know you were in the U.S. last year celebrating the 20-year anniversary of your debut album, Get Born. So that has to be a bit of a badge of honor for a band, to be able to look back and celebrate all that time and still perform those songs.
Yeah, that was a good tour. After we did it in Australia and Europe as well, and after you do, you're restricted because we were playing the songs in order of the album, and you kind of restricted the set as being the same every night, whereas this tour we can play whatever we want. We're not doing a Get Born show, so it's been quite fun. Yeah. Pulling out some we haven't played in a while, putting some new stuff in, a couple of cool covers we like.
You mentioned new music, and I know you guys released a new single back in the fall, I guess, Hurry Hurry. Love your bass line on that, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
Awesome tune. And also the B-side to it, to Hurry Hurry, Un Aventura, very quick, upbeat track. And there's a blend of Spanish and English lyrics. I thought that was
Italian.
Really unique.
It's Italian.
Oh, is that Italian?
Yeah, because Nick spends half his time in Italy. He speaks fluent Italian. So it's actually an Italian song by a really famous songwriter from the 60s and 70s called Lucio Battisti. It's massive. It's he's like the Italian Bob Dylan, but he's a bit more upbeat, but he's respected like Bob Dylan.
Right.
And so this is this is a version of that, but we saw footage of Wilson Pickett in Italy in the 60s. It's one clip on YouTube you can find. And he's doing the song in kind of a hyped up kind of soul. The Lucio Battisti is a bit more of a ballad, and then the Wilson Pickett version is a bit more of a soul tune, and we've sort of made it a bit more almost like the Sonics or something,
right.
A bit more Have Love Will Travel zone, you know. It's a cool tune, yeah. But we've got, I mean, our version is completely different to all the others. It's more of a, you know, punky soul kind of, you know what, we're probably inspired by the Dirt Bombs and bands like that from Norway.
I thought that was really unique too, and I guess I have to catch up on deciphering which languages I'm listening to, but I'll work on that.
They're very close. They're very, very close.
So, like I mentioned, these 2 new songs, 2 new tracks, and from what I've read, this is just a bit of a taste of what's to come in terms of new music for Jet.
Yeah, we've got a big bunch we've been writing. It's, I mean, nowadays we've all got other projects and different things going on, so, you know, writing we don't sort of do as fast as we used to, but we've got a big backlog of songs we've been writing over the last couple of months, and I'd say we'll be probably ready to hit the studio probably pretty soon after this tour. I would say we'd be in good shape. Right out.
So we'll definitely look forward to that, and I'm assuming that maybe some more dates, probably all across, probably back home for you, and hopefully back in North America once that album comes out.
Definitely. Well, look, for us, that's the driver. Like, you know, like our old records will always be pop. You know, people love them. You know, but you know, we need to create new stuff as well. So we're really excited, and it's kind of what motivates you, you know, like we've been playing the same songs for 20 years. So like, it's nice to be able to add even a couple of new songs to the set. And then, you know, if we have a new album, we'll be able to add a whole heap more of new stuff. So pretty exciting.
Yeah, we'll look forward to that. And I wanted to ask you this too. So I know, you know, over the past 20 years with Jet, you know, there's been stretches of time where you mentioned you've been working on other projects or focusing on other things. But you know, when Jet gets back together, when you're working on this new music, you know, do you think those gaps of time where you're not all together, does that keep the creative process fresh for all of you guys collectively?
Yeah, and we kind of beaver away, like working on stuff, and then like I'll write a thing, and you know, I'll have like great music, like a couple of really great musical ideas, but you know, I'm not Nick Sester, who, you know, I can't sing like Nick or anything, so. And he's a great melody writer, so I might make like a little track, and then I'll just email it to him and go, hey, see what you can do with this, like kick this around, and you know what I mean. So it's like you know, we kind of work a bit like that. We you know, we're all in Australia at the moment, so it's a bit easier. But it'll be like a bunch of working solo, and then and then getting together and sort of defining everything, and then going back and sort of, you know, working on it more. We're funny. We're not like we've always been like this. Even with our first record, it was very sort of meticulously work on ideas until we're really happy we've explored all the options and stuff like that. So we put a lot of time and effort and thought into everything, even though they're just silly rock songs, you know. We take them seriously.
And do you feel too, when you get an idea, does it pop up to you that, oh, that's a Jet. That has to be a Jet song.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because, I mean, Nick's got a few different side projects, and so does Cam. Cam's got, like, a solo couple of things. And there's certain songs that just don't fit, you know, that, like, you don't want to try and squeak. You might write a song and it just doesn't feel like a Jet song. But you don't want to try and kind of squash it into this Jet narrative. So it's good that we've got other avenues now, because you're like, I've got this cool tune, but it's not a Jet song, but it's not just going to die on the vine because it's not a Jet song. So that's quite cool. You mentioned as well that you're working on new music, going to be hitting the studio to work on a new album. But you mentioned you got a lot of ideas and maybe some some bass line for some songs already. Do you think on this North American run, would you maybe test out some of these ideas, some of these unreleased tracks before you hit the studio, or do you need to? We rehearsed a bunch up in when we were rehearsing for this tour, so we might bust some out once we're comfy on the tour. We've had a bit of a setback because our keyboard player Louis, who's been with us for forever, since we could afford a keyboard player. Right. We had to leave him in Toronto. He's sick. He had to go to emergency. He's okay. He's not going to die. But we had to do a show without him last night for the first time, and had to get in and like songs like "Look What You've Done" and "Bring It On Back" at 17 are very, very keyboard, like piano driven. I played the piano on a lot of those tunes on the records, but can't do both live. Right. And I'm also I'm a bit shit at piano, even though I played on "Look What You've Done." I'm not I'm not a gun. I'm fine in the studio, but Louis is an absolute monster. Anyway, we had to leave him in Toronto last night, and he's still in hospital in Toronto. So I think that kind of probably put a delay on bringing in the new stuff because we're kind of rearranging some of our songs around not having a piano in sound checks now instead of running these new ones. But we'll see. We'll be right. Like last night was actually killer, even though we didn't have him. Like, we'd much prefer to have him, obviously, but we're a rock and roll band, so we can manage without a piano.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're sending all our best to Louis. Hopefully he has a quick turnaround. And
hopefully we're checking in with him. It was very, I went and dropped his bag off to him in emergency. He was sort of, they'd had him there all day. He's up to a room now, thankfully. He's much happier with a window. But I got really emotional saying goodbye, like having him go back to the gig and then get on a bus and leave town. It felt awful leaving one of your brothers behind. It's not kind of how it works.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, the show must go on, I guess, right? I'm sure he understands that.
Oh, he does. And he's such a staunch man of steel. Like, he did a show in Las Vegas with us in incredible pain, and he did it, and then flew up to Toronto, and then he got off the flight and he said to me, he's like, dude, I'm not good. And if he's one of those people, if they say they're not good, they're really not good. You know what I mean? Like, there's people who complain all the time, and then there's people who, like, if they tell you they're not feeling great, it means they're very, very sick. So yeah, we got him into emergency, and like at midnight I took him in after the flight, and yeah, it was pretty emotional leaving him behind, man. It was not a very nice thing to do to carry on without him, but we're hoping at some point, if he gets cleared by the doctors and he's better, he can come and join us somewhere along the run.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, sending our best wishes to him and for a quick recovery. But maybe shifting gears or sticking with the tour here. Tell me a little bit, Mark, about about your support act on this tour, Band of Skulls. They're from the UK.
They are really cool. We only met them for the first time last night, and it's a really good fit. They fit really, when you go see a band and the opening act is like quite similar, it's kind of like you kind of get fatigued. They're a cool rock band, but they just they're not the same ilk because they don't sound like us. They're really great. Like, it was really fun watching this. Some great songs, and they obviously have a big bunch of people who are pumped to see them as well because they've got some cracking songs. Yeah, it's going to be fun. I got a good feeling. With the support act, sometimes it takes a little while to warm up to each other. It's like The Warriors, that movie, two rival gangs meet.
Right.
but instantly we were like, oh, these guys are great. We watched their whole set on the side of stage, and they watched our whole set on the side of stage. And that's like, that's kind of like where you start. That's where you start showing respect to each other. And first thing we said, they only played half an hour, and we're like, oh, you guys should play longer. We'll go on, we can shorten our changeover so you can do longer set. Because a half an hour set's it's a tricky one to do. Like,
you just kind of get warmed up, right?
Exactly, and we're like, well, if you want to play longer. I remember when we were out playing with Bruce Springsteen in Australia a couple of years ago, we did a tour with Bruce, and he did the same thing. We were playing for 45 minutes, and they were like, play for an hour. We love it. You guys should play for an hour. Do your whole set, It was good. It's really a nice feeling because, you don't want to just get on half an hour and get off. It's like, that's like first band on at a festival kind of stuff,
Right. Yeah. And that's funny you mentioned the Bruce Springsteen tour. I was just going to ask you about that, like being the opener. I think it was back in 2017 when he opened for The Boss. So how did that come together? That's because you guys were on a bit of a hiatus.
Well, that kind of got us back.
Yeah,
right? We always joke, if the boss calls, you pick up the phone.
No doubt.
But it was really good. It was like, what about that tour? I was talking about respect before. When you've been on doing this for a long time, you sort of notice things. And what I noticed with them, it's a big crew doing a big show who's been together for a long time, and they can often be quite prickly, those big US touring crews of big bands. But Bruce's crew and band were just like so lovely. And, that means clearly the organisation is lovely, which means the boss is, you know what I mean? Like it's a trickle down. If the boss is an arsehole, normally everybody else sort of reflects that. So yeah, everyone was lovely. We were going out for dinner with Steve Van Sant and sit there with him, and I just wanted him to do Silvio impersonations, and he did. He would do them. It was amazing. I loved it. We've actually known him for a while. He used to come and watch us play back in the old days. when we were playing clubs in New York, he was like one of our earlier kind of he was sort of beating the drum for us pretty early. He had his radio show, Little Steven's Underground Garage or something it was called. Maybe like one of those early satellite radio stations.
Right.
And he would come and watch us, and you knew whether there was an episode of The Sopranos out or a series out, because if he had no security with him, you knew that like he was chill. But if he had a couple of security with him, you knew that he was there was a new Sopranos series out, and he was getting recognized and bothered a lot more.
Oh, that's amazing. So, well, tell you what, Mark, it's so great to hear you talk about these stories, and it's even better to see that Jet is on the road and here in North America. We're looking forward to the show coming up in Detroit on June 6th at the Fillmore, but definitely head to jetofficial.com to get all the latest on the tour across North America and the new music that's in the works. So, Mark, thank you very much for taking the time with us today.
Hey, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.